And the last book that I'm going to mention is also another I don't really know what just happened there. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some cozy book recommendations. So as you guys have definitely heard me say before, I think of fall as a two-part kind of a season where you've got the first part, which is more spooky, or you've got Halloween, it's October, you want some of the more spookier reads. And then in November is the second half of fall, and those are the cozier reads. You want to snuggle up with a nice warm sweater, with a lovely cup of tea or coffee, depending on what you are into, and you just want to snuggle and read some cozy books. Some books that you can get lost in, some books that just give you those homey feels where you can just snuggle up and stay warm for the entire day. And that's what we're doing today. I have some book recommendations for you. This is kind of, like I said, a part 2 to the spooky recommendations that I did last month. But I think of November as like the fun mug, snuggle up with a nice candle feeling month. And so I wanted to talk about some more cozier books that I would suggest you read if you just want to snuggle up and enjoy a good book. I honestly don't even know how many there are here. I think there are maybe 10 or 11 books that I have to show you. They're all over the place. Some of them make sense, some of them do not. But to me, they all feel like good, cozy reads. I've got a wide range of genres, so hopefully something on here will spark your interest. And let's just get started. The first book I'm going to talk about is really what kind of sparked this entire video idea, and that is The Gallery by Laura Marks Fitzgerald. This is a middle grade book that is set in like the 20s in a giant mansion, and it is kind of like a mystery book. We follow our main character, Martha, who starts working at the house that her mother works at, and it's owned by this man who owns a very big, prominent newspaper in the town, and his wife is said to be mad, so she is kind of staying upstairs, kind of locked away, so that she doesn't hurt anybody. And Martha doesn't really believe that, and so she kind of does her own little investigation into this wife, and it all revolves around artwork, and that's why it is called The Gallery. But this is just a very fun, cozy, middle grade mystery book. This gives me like kind of those detective books like Sherlock Holmes and other things like that, but being middle grade and obviously without the detective part. So it's I don't know why, but this just gives me cozy vibes. I sat down and read this an entire day. So it's very good. I highly, highly recommend it. This cover is gorgeous, and it's just a fun mystery book that is set in the 20s. So I highly recommend this one. So the next one I'll just get out of the way because it kind of dealt with a little bit what I said, and that is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a Sherlock Holmes novel. Now this is the only Sherlock Holmes novel that I have read, which is why I'm suggesting this one specifically. But I feel like any kind of Sherlock Holmes book would work for this prompt. This one does give you a little bit of the spooky vibes because it does take place in an old mansion. And I don't know what it is about this book, but this just gives me cozy vibes. Something about Sherlock Holmes makes me think of coziness and just snuggling up and reading a good mystery. I think a mystery is kind of like my snuggle read. This just gives me very, very cozy vibes. It might be the color of this specific copy, but any kind of Sherlock Holmes I think would work for this. But this is the one that I've read, so this is what I am recommending. So the next one I'm going to recommend is another middle grade, but that is a middle grade fantasy. And this one is The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. We should not be surprised by this point. I did end up reading this first book in November, so that might be why I think of it as cozy, but this is a very fun, it's not too long, at least the first one's not very long. The more you get into the series, it gets a little longer, but this one is very fairy tale-esque, which kind of gives me those cozy vibes as well. You get very lost in this world as you're discovering it with our two main characters, Sophie and Agatha. And it just takes place at this school for good and evil, where they basically take people and they're either at the school for good or at the school for evil, and they basically turn them into princesses and princes or evil villains and henchmen. And so that's kind of what this is set around, and Sophie and Agatha are taken to this school, and I think they know which school they're going to be going to, either good or evil, and then they end up going to the reverse. And this is a crazy series. It gets very complex in the best sort of way, but this first one is just really cozy. It takes place at the school. You're learning about this awesome magic system. It just gives me those fantasy fairy tale cozy vibes. So I recommend this one. The next one is actually a graphic novel, and that is Pneumonia by Noelle Stevenson. I've definitely recommended this a handful of times before, but it's this absolutely gorgeous graphic novel that is written and illustrated by Noelle Stevenson, and it basically follows our main character right here, and she is a shapeshifter, as you can tell by the wings that she has, and she decides that she wants to be the henchman for this evil villain, Mr. Wow, it's been a while I haven't read this. Mr. Lord Ballister Blackheart. And it's very cozy. It's very easy to get through. I really loved it. I found an audiobook of this on Scribd, so I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook while you physically read it, because it does give it an extra level of oomph on top of it. But it's very short. You can get this done very, very quickly, and it gives you the cozy vibes that you can snuggle up with and totally get lost in this world. It's a one-off, so it's a standalone. You don't have an entire series to dedicate your time to. You can read this and be done. And it is great, and I love it. The next one is a little bizarre of one to do as a cozy read, and I think it's just because I can totally get lost in this world, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm sure many of you have actually read this book before and have definitely heard about it. It was really popular a couple of years ago. So it basically follows our main character, Monique, who is a magazine reporter and is basically asked by Evelyn Hugo specifically for her to come over and do something for a magazine. And it turns out that Evelyn Hugo wants to tell her life story, and this book is basically her life story as she's telling it to Monique. And it's set in the classic Hollywood time period. It's very much sounds like a very classic Hollywood autobiography, because I've read some kind of set in this time period before, and it has the same feelings as this one, but you totally get swept away. You totally care about these characters. You kind of forget that they are not fictional characters because it's written so incredibly well. But it's just a fun, it's kind of like a mixture of historical fiction and contemporary all meshed into one, because it is set in a modern day setting, but you are learning about Evelyn Hugo, and her life is technically historical fiction. So it meshes those two genres together, but I personally really loved it. I believe that the hype is definitely worth it if you are interested in learning about an entire person and their history, and why Evelyn Hugo specifically chose Monique was insane. And it just felt like such a real story, and I think you can definitely cozy up with this and get lost in the world. The next one I am going to suggest for you is another mystery book, and that is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I actually read this one a little bit earlier this year, but it's exactly what it sounds like. This is set in kind of a winter setting, and it follows a detective who is on this train called the Orient Express, and because it has snowed, it gets stuck because the tracks have iced over. They're kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere, and then a murder takes place on this train, and he is trying to figure out kind of what happened there. So it's very fun. It's very simple to get through. I loved it. This is actually the only Agatha Christie book that I have read. I hope to read many more, but this one just gives you those November end of year vibes because it's cold out. It's set during winter, so you just want to snuggle up because they keep talking about the snow, because the snow is a big part of the mystery, and it's very good. It's very easy to get through. I really enjoyed it. It's a mystery. It's fun. It's a cozy book, so I recommend this one. The next one might be only cozy to me because I loved it so much, and that is The Missing Manuscripts of Jane Austen by Siri James. This, I'm sure you guys are tired of me raving about because it was so good. But basically, this just follows our main character, Samantha, who finds a letter in a poetry book that she has just bought that basically hints the fact that there is a manuscript that Jane Austen has written that no one has seen. And so she goes to the house that is suspected to have this missing manuscript and convinces the guy who owns the house to help her search for it. And then they find it, and 90% of this book is the actual manuscript. So you're reading a story that is supposed to be another Jane Austen novel. And I love it because you see hints within this novel of other novels that Jane Austen has written, and this really does feel like a Jane Austen novel. It feels like a very early Jane Austen novel. It feels like if Jane Austen wrote books in the present day, this is the kind of book that she would write, and I just devoured this book. I read it within not in one sitting, but basically 1 or 2 days, and I just snuggled up, and it was cozy. It was very good. The next one is another graphic novel. This one is actually part of a series, but you can read them online if you want to. And that is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. There are 3 volumes currently out in paperback, but like I said, you can read it online for free if you would like to do that. This just follows 2 boys in school who become friends, and then feelings emerge and what that means. And there's a lot of exploration, especially in the first one, about sexuality. And the later novels, or the later volumes, it does tackle a few different topics. So I would definitely check out trigger warnings, because I think it's handled very well, but there are some things that might be triggering. But it's just a very, very cute love story between these 2 boys. And it's like so cute. And like, it's, like I said, a graphic novel, but the panes are like really large, and it's very easy to get through, and it's very easy to get swept away into this story and totally lose track of time. I love this. They're so cute. This is a very kind of fluffy book. It does tackle some issues, but throughout all of them, it still has this very fluffy romance feel, and they're just fun. They're just fun. The next one is also one that might be weird to recommend, but I have reasons, and that is Eligible by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is a modernized retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and I say that this would work really, really well for a cozy read, because for me, when I think of cozy reads, I think of things that I could totally get lost in, and for me, I get lost in romances really, really easily. I get swept away by the couple, and I love all of it. So this is one that I definitely got swept up in. This is this is for sure my favorite retelling of Pride and Prejudice that I have read. I still think that holds true. I read this one, I want to say it was last year, and still love it. It was still great. It's not small, but the chapters, like this is chapter, that's it. Like they have really, really small chapters, so that makes it easier to get through, and it is a contemporary romance, which I just absolutely love. It does tackle some interesting topics within this book. I haven't seen many Pride and Prejudice retellings do that, but I just think romance is really fun that you can snuggle up and totally get lost in, and this is one of my favorites, so of course I recommend this one. And the very last book that I'm going to recommend to you is another historical fiction. I feel like cozy books are like mysteries and historical fictions. I feel like that's what a lot of people read at this time of year, so that one is going to be The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. This is a book told in letters. So this takes place after World War II, I want to say, and German occupation, Nazis, that kind of timeline. And so she just gets this letter from a man who has basically received a book and has bought a book that her name was in, and he really enjoyed the book, so we decided to reach out to her and ask if she had any more recommendations, and that strikes up this beautiful friendship where he tells her all about this society that is on the island of Guernsey during the German occupation, and it's how they all read books and could get together and get away with getting together during the Nazi time. My favorite part about this book is that this, like I said, is a collection of letters, and it's not just between Juliet and this guy whose name I'm forgetting, but it's not just between the 2 of them. She starts talking to the other people that are part of the society. So you get letters from her, you get letters from this guy, and then you get letters from about 7 or 8, if not more, other people. And each of them have their own individual voice, and it's so well written. It's very easy to get through. I'm not even kidding you. I'm pretty sure I read this within a day or 2. I loved this so much, and you really get to see these characters develop through these letters and really get to see this beautiful community come together in a very difficult time. And I just think it's really easy to snuggle up with this one because you can totally get lost in this world. But this book is just so well done, and I really, really loved it. So you can get swept up real easy in this one. And that's it. Those are the, I think I said 11 is probably what I did. 11 books that I recommend for cozy reads. A lot of mysteries, a lot of historical fiction, some that you can just totally get swept up in and get cozy with, because cozy reads are the best kinds of reads. That is what I have for you guys today. I very much hope that you enjoyed this video. Please chat with me down below if you've read any of the books that I have mentioned, or if you have like a really good cozy read. I would love to know that as well. But if you did like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well if you want to follow along on any of those. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!